Hello and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Tally. This is episode 28 and I'm your host, Brian Tally. The mission and the goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of some of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and on Spotify. The online information and handles are all located on the scrolling ticker at the bottom portion of your screen. Be sure to like and share the program as well. You can also support the program by going to Anchor FM or Spotify and clicking the support button. Folks, I want to tell you about this new streaming platform that we are now a part of called Americonic.com. You can watch this video podcast along with others like it. It also has classic movies and TV shows with new content being added and growing nearly every day. Join today by subscribing to Americonic.com and using the promo code TALLY. That's TALLY, T-A-L-L-Y. Join the revolution today. Americonic.com. That's Americonic.com. Folks, we have a very special guest joining us on today's program. It's not every day you have the opportunity to sit down with one of Hollywood's most iconic and recognized tough guys in the industry. You will recognize him from hit TV shows and movies such as Deadpool, Deadpool 2, 21 Jump Street, Sin City, Harold and Kumar, Walker, Texas Ranger, King of the Hill, Reno 911, ER, Castle, and many others. Today, Randal still has a successful acting career, but he eventually took to production and development. Randal created and produced the hit outdoor shows Killin' and Grillin', KNG Chronicles, as well as creating and starring in the #1 rated Pure Flix original TV series, Sons of Thunder. At age 18, the native Texan Randal Reeder began training as a professional wrestler with WWF, having set his sights on Hollywood early in his pro wrestling career. Acting quickly became Randal's primary focus. He soon became that guy in Hollywood. Randal's new mission has led him to assemble and build a team to create an American-centric entertainment streaming platform, which he calls Americonic.com. Randal's goal and vision is to take back our country 1 minute at a time by simply making entertainment entertaining again. With that, we are honored to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend, and saved savage, Randal Reeder. How are you?
Man, I'm great. You're like, you could be a hype man. You could just get paid to be a hype man, you know? That's good stuff, bro. You made me sound way better than I am.
That's my job here. You know, when I got hurt really bad back in January of 2016, I wanted to develop myself into being some sort of voice. And finally, God put this on my heart nearly a month ago today. And we are 26 episodes in on this new mission of mine. And I am honored to be here with you today, Mr. Reeder. This is going to be a good program, and our listeners are going to be in store from some behind-the-scenes some looks behind the curtain on how Hollywood is, coming from one of the most iconic tough guys in the industry, man. We are excited.
Yeah. I love it. You know, you stumble on Mr. Reeder because to you, I'm just Randal because we're just
right. I gotta be a little bit professional.
I know,
you know what I mean?
Man.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
I miss her. Yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So
my man.
Well, yeah, man. I love what you're doing. I've loved what you're doing since the passing the tally bill and all that, you know, and just what you're doing for, you know, veterans. And I think it's interesting how, you know, like necessity is the mother of all invention. You know, it's adversity, your own adversity pushed you into doing something great for other people and for our country. And in that wild, doesn't it kind of help us start to understand what happens to us? It's and why things happen, because that's like, we're always like, why, Lord, why? But when you look backwards, you go, for hindsight's 2020, you're like, wow, look what happened because of all of that misery, so.
I often think about that a lot, and I have asked those questions, and looking back on it all now, it is truly magical, how my life changed in ways that I could have never seen coming or ever imagined, in a very bad way. And now here I am 6.5 years later, and my life is changing in ways that I could have never seen coming or ever imagined, in a positive way.
Wow.
So the Lord has definitely worked in me, and I continue to work through him to live the life that I was intended to live.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's good stuff. Well, I love what you're doing, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. As soon as you told me about it, there was just, I don't even think you had to ask me before. I was just like, dude, I gotta be there. This is awesome. I gotta be a part of it. So.
Yeah, we've been good friends since I moved to Texas here. We often hang out at Honor Cafe and break bread and tell stories. And I love what you're doing now with your newfound mission in life.
Right.
But before we get too dug into that,
Sure.
How about our listeners get to meet Randal Reeder?
Right.
What was your childhood growing up in East Texas like?
Well, it's funny. I had everybody always asks me where I'm from, and I pause and I have to think about it, and I think they're going, how hard a question is that? Well, I was born in, like Pasadena, Texas, but my family had a plumbing company in LaPorte, Texas, called Reeder Plumbing since the late '60s, since my dad got back from Vietnam, and so I was born there, but then, I don't know, a year into my life or something, they bought some land up in Carthage, Texas, and we moved up there. And my dad was like a serial entrepreneur. I mean, he was just like, I remember I think the first time we kind of went broke and went back to plumbing. So like, about 5, 6 years old, we moved back down to LaPorte for him to go back to plumbing. And it was because we'd been raising and breeding limousine cattle, and these big cows, and then I don't know, a few years, about the time we get flush and doing okay, we moved back to East Texas, and we're raising Arabian horses, or something, and then it ends up race horses and different things. He was always doing construction and such, doing plumbing, things like that. So I spent my whole life, even when we were living in East Texas, I would spend the summers, down working for my grandfather at Reeder Plumbing. My whole life, from probably 10 years old on, every summer I spent in the LaPorte area, the Houston area. So I was kind of back and forth. So I know as many people in Houston as I do up in East Texas, maybe more. And so that's. But when they ask me where I'm from, I say Carthage, because that's where I went to high school, and kind of the set you claim, right? It's like, oh yeah, I'm from Carthage, Texas, because that's where you went to high school, and so that's what I do. And but yeah, bounced from there pretty quickly, and went off hauling race horses because I wanted to be a wealthy entrepreneur. I'm a serial entrepreneur like my father, which means I spend most of my time broke and jobless and trying to get something off the ground. And then I ended up I was approached a couple of times over the years because I was so big, and I played football in junior high and got my knee taken out and had to have surgery. in the 8th grade. And so my dad wouldn't let me play football in high school. I could be in off season, but not play a game. So I spent, I don't know, 3 years of in football off season, varsity, with training with the seniors when I was a freshman. But I had this, I almost had, I think my coaches kind of took their resentment of my dad not letting me play a game out on me. And so I kind of really developed, I just never fell in love with football. You know, I was in it. I ran a 5 flat 40 or something when I was a junior, and I was I was probably 300 pounds and 6'8". You know, I could have went anywhere I wanted to go, even not being a good football player, just mere size and you know, and speed. I could have played offensive line somewhere, but ended up just, you know, going off to haul racehorses and stuff like that. And that lasted not too long before my truck caught on fire in Baltimore, Maryland. And I was in, you know, LaPorte, Texas, back to doing plumbing. And I was doing also concert security at Southwest Concert Security, guys in the yellow shirts up down here in Houston at all the concerts back then. And I worked at a wrestling match down at the Coliseum one evening. And that's where a guy says, "Man, you should be a wrestler." I said, "Yeah, that's what everybody says." He goes, "Well, I'm not everybody. Call my dad tomorrow." And he handed me Ivan Putski's card. And he was like a WWF legend, Ivan Putski. And so I called him up and went and saw him. And he said, "Yeah, you should totally start." Even though I missed the class, they spent I was 2 weeks behind everyone, but they caught me up, and it was brutal and you know, broke ribs and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I did that, you know. I was high and tight that day, and when I went down there, I was all flat top, ready to join the Navy. My dad was real against it, but I was going to do it anyway. And then he said, "Well, look, the Navy's always going to be there. Try this wrestling thing, and then if it doesn't work, I'll lay off of it and just I'll support you going into the military. You can even go in the Marines or whatever you want to do." I just, you know, I've never stopped wrestling, or I didn't for years, you know. So it went well for me, and I never went to WWF. I've got letters from them. I've almost went a couple of times. I've worked with a lot of legends from WWF. Kind of worked at I guess it would be considered a farm league towards the end of my career, because I worked for Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, and he had a farm league type of organization down in San Antonio, and I worked with some of his guys that went up, like Daniel Bryan and people like that. I gave them some of their first matches. But I always actually went into it to go into acting. So that was, and it was a good place, you know. Texas was a good place to start as an acting. It was just the stars aligned. I mean, Walker, Texas Ranger was being filmed up in Dallas, and there was low budget movies and things like that. So it just worked out well for me. Praise God, I guess, or I don't know. I think the devil had more to do with my career for many years than God. But now God's in control. So,
but now you are a safe savage. You know, I want to go back to a little bit of what you were talking about, how the coaches took it all out on you. You know, that resentfulness because your father wouldn't let you perhaps be a number one draft pick somehow, you know, and someday being a blind-side tackle, you know, in East Texas, where, you know, college football and high school football is religion.
We were, legendary school, one state all the time, reigning rules, 4A. You know, honestly, LSU came over and watched me practice a couple of times, even though I'd never played a game. It was a wild deal. I just, you know, I even later when I was wrestling, I almost played semi-pro to step back up into pro, just because I found out that I'm getting abused every day of the year as a wrestler. making like $100 a match or $50. Sometimes, I mean, started out like sometimes $20 a match. It was crazy how much little you get paid until you make it. And even when you made it back then, it was like, you know, a couple $100,000 a year or something like that, unless you were Hogan. And so I actually trained and almost went through a combine a couple of times to go into football, even though I didn't love the game. I was like, man, just sitting on a bench is $450,000 downside guarantee. I'm like, man, that's crazy. I should just go suck and be a practice dummy. And you know.
Well, you know, coming out of your freshman year at 6'8", 300 pounds, there's not much that you would have to do to be a blindside other than just stand up and just block the hell out of the guy that's coming your way and just protect the quarterback for a few seconds, give him some time in the pocket to make a play, and there you are earning a big paycheck.
Well, you know, it's funny, my team captain, which was our quarterback, I believe, he told me a story. I didn't know about it. He told me that LSU came over and looked at me and he said the coach was like, "What do you want to look at him for? He doesn't even know how to play. He's never even played a game." And the you know, the LSU scout or whatever looked at the coach kind of like, I don't care if he can play. He runs a 5 flat and 40. He's 300 pounds and 6'7". I just need the dude to fill a hole. You know?
Oh yeah, and you know, and these these colleges and these NFL scouts aren't dumb. They've done this many times before, and case in point, Antonio Gates, one of the best NFL tight ends to ever play the game, never played in college. He was a basketball player. He had a basketball scholarship to college, but they saw what he could do with his size and his hands, and they transformed him into being the best tight end that the NFL has ever really seen. So, I mean, I know why they were hot on your tail to get you in there because of your size alone. And then you add speed to it. And, you got
my dad was going to let me play as a senior. He was like, look, you can play as a senior because you're big enough that you can go anywhere you want. You know, if you can play as a senior. The thing was, I got mad over absentee rules and silly stuff like that. And I was, I had attitude. So I ended up just not going my senior year, ran down, took my GED, and just bounced and went into business. I moved up, to Paducah, Kentucky or something, and to haul racehorses because I was just, too impatient and all that. Had I went my senior year and played a football game and enjoyed the victory, and the spoils that comes with victory, who knows what would have happened? I might have went to, some college and then, went NFL, and my life could have been totally different. But, it doesn't matter because I didn't do it. So
right.
Here's what it is.
Right.
So instead I was, destroying my body for, a few $100 a week as a pro wrestler for, almost about 10 or 11 years, so it's kind of crazy.
Let's talk about being a pro wrestler for just a few minutes. Steroid use, after parties, a very fast paced life. Can you describe a little bit about how that was?
Yeah, it's insanity. I mean, it's it's funny. I don't think we were the only one, but a couple of my friends, every once in a while because they'd say like, well, just pray to the wrestling gods, and then we kind of started saying, well, there is a god of wrestling and it's Satan. Like, I mean, we just, that business is just so wild. Especially back then. I mean, like in the 90s, it was real. A lot of the old school guys were there. And I've spent a lot of time in the dressing room and running the roads with wrestlers. I mean, legendary guys, from, Stone Cold Steve Austin when he was stunning Steve Austin, being, lacing up his boots right beside me in Dallas and stuff like that. Our Mick Foley's and people like that. I mean, just legendary people, legendary workers. And I've hung out with a lot of wrestlers, and then I've hung out with a lot of like, you know, one percenters, let me put it that way, of motorcycle clubs and stuff. And I swear the one percenters are a better group of people sometimes than the wrestlers that I used to hang out with. You know, it was a wild ride. I mean, it was a vicious locker room, lots of politics. You know, I didn't love it either. So, you know, had I loved that business, I would have probably I would have went ahead and went to WWF and some of these places that I really could have gone, you know, multiple times. And I just somehow didn't do it. I knew my marriage wouldn't last, you know, I didn't want to, you know, I knew there's no way my first wife, who it didn't last anyway, ironically, but, you know, I knew that there's no way she could have dealt with a 320 days a year schedule, you know, like
Wow.
Back then, especially WWF was just insane. WCW as well. I mean, you were literally on the road 300 plus days a year. My buddy, Tony Norris, who wrestled he went on up to WWF or WWE, whichever was back then at that time. And he became a big star there for a minute, and as Ahmed Johnson. And man, he would have to fake an injury just to get a day off. I mean, I hope I didn't just get him in trouble. They probably don't like him anyway. He's been out of it for a long time, but you know, that's what I would hear, that people would just fake injuries, you know, just to get a few days off because it was just a crazy schedule. And that's the guys making a lot of money that were successful at it. You know, it was a brutal business. And as a friend of mine, Booker T, who we came up together, we trained at the same school, him and his brother, Lash or Stevie Ray, they were in the class before me and Tony Norris, like the class before us. So they were wrestling at the time on TV that we were going through school. And Booker T told me one time, he says, man, he said, I wouldn't wish this business on my worst enemy. And he said, and I'm successful. You know, I mean, he was like, you know, 5-time world champion and all this kind of stuff back then, you know. And he was saying, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It's a brutal business.
Now, why? Why is that? Can you explain what we may not know about that business that makes it something that's very difficult to do?
Probably. I mean, I remember same type of class. I think Avon Riley from the Houston Oilers, I remember he was a wrestler with Stevie Ray and Booker back then with WWA, World Wrestling Alliance, that I started with you know, Ivan Putski and Joe Blanchard and all that. They I remember he was like, man, this is way harder than football, you know. And I was like, wow, really? He said, oh yeah, this is way rougher. He said, one, we only play football like 4 months a year, you know, or something, you know. Mm-hmm. He said the schedule is just insane with wrestling, but also it's really brutal, you know. I mean, it's just it's, you know, fake in the sense that it's, you know, the outcomes are staged and stuff, but and you're not trying to kill somebody. I mean, it's not like it's not MMA, but you take MMA, it can't be MMA because MMA, you know, what do you fight like every a few months? I mean, you don't do a fight right after another. No. You got to heal up. Boxing, any of that, and that's really where the fake. It's funny, pro wrestling in its like 1800s was real, you know, and it just got progressively more staged because they would leave one town and they would get in a horse and carriage or the train or whatever, and they go to the next town. Well, they couldn't be banged up and they couldn't have broken their arm. So they started, hey, look, don't do this. And then they just started staging the outcome. It just evolved into what it is now. It started out basically mixed martial arts. You know, it's just, you know, you can't do that every single day, you know, because somebody breaks their arm. I remember like when the UFC started, how many alternates won? Like Dan Severn, I'm pretty sure was an alternate because, you know, like whoever it was had broken their hand, and couldn't advance because they were like cracking some guy in the skull and broke their hand, and then they couldn't advance an alternate who hadn't fought all night won the whole championship. And that's what it was with, pro wrestling. That's why it ended up being kind of fake or staged or whatever. Well, bro,
Right.
You can't fake getting slammed on concrete.
Oh, no.
Even on the ring, people go, oh, yeah, it's like be a mattress. Well, okay, put a mattress on your living room floor and let somebody body slam you. Because I did it when I was before I went to school. I was like, oh, I better train. And I just fell on a mattress that was on the floor. I think I might have broken my rib then. I mean, I didn't know to exhale. I didn't know to land on my shoulders first. I didn't know, you learn how to fall as a pro wrestler. You learn how to throw someone in a way in which that they can take their own bump and not kill themselves,
Sure. Yeah. You're flying off the.
Yeah. You start doing wrestling moves on somebody for real, you're going to go to prison for at least, involuntary manslaughter or something. You're going to be killing somebody.
I can imagine you coming, from the top ropes, and body slamming somebody or taking one of those chairs and whacking them across the head. I mean, that stuff is real. But, I want to fast forward a little bit. We're going to have you on several more times just to even scratch the surface on
I got
who
stories.
you are.
I got stories.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So fast forward, we get out of the wrestling career and you head to Hollywood.
Right.
And you quickly moved up that food chain, if you will, on becoming the iconic tough guy in in so many scenes in Hollywood, whether they be bar scenes or prison scenes or whatever it was, that you're just this mountain of a man with this face and the beard and everything that goes along with bumping into the wrong guy in a bar. Can you explain how you got to kick off your career in Hollywood and describe what it was like getting that first phone call to audition for, something, like a Hollywood movie?
Well, getting to becoming that guy was a 20-year overnight journey. It's like one of those. It took a long time, but I will say that I had so much more success early on than most people, and I describe that to people when they ask me how do I get into acting. I tell them, and they say, okay, so I just do that. I'm like, yeah, but I happen to be a certain look that when I was in Texas, in the 90s, I was auditioning against like really 3 or 4 different guys. There were 3 main guys that I would audition against, or 2 main guys I would audition against. Dave Efron, who's been in like 200 movies, and then Jerry Mee, who was a friend of mine that I wrestled with actually. And it was kind of always the big guys were either me, Dave, or Jerry. I might be forgetting someone, but I think that was about it. And then when I booked like Walker, Texas Ranger guest stars and stuff. So that was just huge. So when I went to LA late in the 90s for the first time, I had an agent within days. And normally it takes years of living in LA to get an agent, but I had good credits. I was SAG eligible. I had done speaking roles on network TV shows and movies. So, it was just, to someone to replicate my career it's unrealistic. Like I was blessed in the way that they called Texas the third coast when I got into this business. So there was the East Coast, the West Coast, and Texas, the third coast. So they were doing a lot of movies and TV shows here. So, and there wasn't much competition, and it was a right to work state. I mean, it was like a perfect storm of, it was just awesome, for me. And then when I went to LA, like I say, I already had a lot of credits, so I didn't have to work as an extra to try to get my SAG card and a lot of stuff that other people have to do. So I also was a pro wrestler, and it helped because I don't know how many auditions I've walked in and people, the director, you know, I'm like, I've just went through the lines and I'm ready to come in and just like say, hey, I'm Randal Reeder and say who I'm with and do the lines. And they're like, hey, so you were a pro wrestler. I was like, yeah. And they're like, what was that like? And they start talking to me and 10 minutes into me telling them about wrestling, I'm like, hey, could we do this audition so that, you know, because they'll throw me off. Now, all of a sudden I've been, you know, talking about my past for 10 minutes and now I've got to come back and play this, you know, do these lines that I've now forgotten. And it was pretty funny, but, you know, I don't know how many times that's happened because people are so interested because no one watches it. Oh, I never watch that stuff. That's just, you know, and then I was like, oh, I understand. And then they're like, but what's going on with Hulk Hogan and so-and-so? Why is he, you know, I'm like, I bet you never watch it, you know, because it's an embarrassing thing, I guess, for most, you know, it's like, it's soap operas for men. That's what pro wrestling is.
And I'm not going to lie. I grew up as a kid going Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Ultimate Warrior, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Jake the Snake Roberts. Those were my guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, incredible. And I will say that I don't watch it anymore, but when I was a kid, it was definitely part of my childhood. And you know, some very, very good times going, you know, to the San Diego Sports Arena, watching these guys live and, you know, getting into it. And at the time I thought it was real. So,
right.
But, you know, you had mentioned that you do have an extremely unique career because you didn't have a lot of folks in the talent pool that were going against you when you were auditioning because you're this mountain of a man, 6'8", well over 300 pounds, and you've got the looks of what they're looking for in Hollywood. Now, you did a lot of bouncing and a lot of security in Hollywood as you were, you know, gradually moving up the ladder. Now, a lot of the stuff that you bounced for were these fairly large A-list actors at their private residences in L.A. Can you explain what it was like, you know, rubbing elbows with A-list actors and kind of protecting them as you watched over their parties?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I you know, making it in Hollywood is, you know, I mean, other than just blind luck, which happens, but it's really about who you know and being in the right place at the right time. And I tried to make it an art to be at the right place at the right time. So when I moved out there in 2004, well, even when in 2007, when I first moved out there, I was at the Whiskey a Go-Go and places like that working. But when I moved out in 2004, I got a job at the Highlands, which was like at Hollywood Highlands. And it's kind of right above the Chinese Theater. So when they would do the big movie premieres at the Chinese Theater and shut down Hollywood Boulevard, all the people would walk up the stairs and take the escalators up to the Highlands where they would do the after party or the big premiere parties. So, you know, here I am bouncing at this club and, you know, they're doing all these after parties for all these huge movies. And I did that on purpose and I didn't walk up and go, hey, I'm Randal, I'm an actor, because that's what everybody does. I just wanted that familiarity where people would see me, and then next thing you know, they might see me on an audition or see my photo and go, I've seen that guy before. Where have I seen that guy? And, you know, just something to – so I kind of did that. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, there was only – even when I went out to L.A., I thought there would be like hundreds of people I would audition against. And I call us the usual suspects because it's maybe 10 tops people that I audition against. I mean, every now and then there's a new guy and I'll be in there and I'll look around. And of course, we hardly ever audition in person anymore. Thank you, COVID. You know, it's probably the only good thing that came out of it is we don't have to go into auditions very often. But, you know, back then I would look over and say, hey, who's the new guy? You know, because it's just a handful of people. So, yeah, it is. I'm a niche within a niche. And that's been a blessing. That being said, you only need that guy every now and then. So maybe I do 5 movies a year. It's not, and I haven't done much lately since I moved into faith-based. I've just don't have the desire to work in traditional Hollywood anymore. I mean, don't get me wrong. When Deadpool calls and wants me to do another one, I'm always like, yeah, I can do that.
Describe the Hollywood scene. Is it full of drugs? Is it full of, just things that we wouldn't normally see?
I will, but I got to plug in my phone. My computer, it's going to die.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Sure. And folks, we are with Randal Reeder. This guy has had a storied career. As you can see here, Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2, 21 Jump Street, Harold and Kumar, Walker, Texas Ranger, and much, much, much more. And we are going to get to learn a little bit more about Randal and his successes as soon as he gets back to plug in his computer, because his juice has literally ran low. And so we cannot, have him completely go blank on us. So he's got to go ahead and do that. But in this part 2 here coming up here, we're going to learn a little bit more about him and where his career has taken him to where he is now. So let's get back to Hollywood for a few minutes before we start moving into your next chapter here. You were talking, we were talking about what's it like in Hollywood. The drugs, the alcohol, the after parties. Can you describe that?
Yeah. I gotta say, drugs wise, it exists. Don't get me wrong. When I was in wrestling, I think wrestling was worse than Hollywood. Now, about the time I got out of wrestling, that's when Kurt Angle's and people it got more professional, wrestling did, So, it might not be as wild as it was back when I was in it. Then in Hollywood, I didn't, it's like California. I mean, now weed is everywhere. Everybody smokes weed out there. So, but I didn't see a lot of cocaine and things like that. Excuse me just a second. My nose is itching. So I didn't, as I was talking about drugs, my nose was itching.
Oh man.
So, no, I didn't see a lot of that stuff. Don't get me wrong. It's out there and, it's a bad, it is, it's everywhere, but the party lifestyle, to me, it's, I don't know. I don't think it's as wild and crazy as it's perceived. Now I'm sure there are some, and it's certainly debaucherous, and I'm sure at some level, I mean, I'm sure it gets way more debaucherous. Me and I've had conversations with people that have done documentaries that have had millions and millions of views about the wickedness of Hollywood and the Satanism and all that. I haven't seen a lot of it, but you just kind of know it exists. Does that make sense? I mean, I've never got to that level to where, I've been invited to some crazy Maria Abramovich party or whatever, where there's dead people that you're eating and and it's cake. And I mean, all that crazy stuff that you see, I just never, I didn't get to that level. Or they were like, yeah, we probably shouldn't invite him to this party. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but to me, it's just, it's more the wickedness of Hollywood is honestly, to me, it's the self worship of just to be a good actor, really just to advance yourself as an actor in the craft. You have to know thyself. You have to really, the way I act, I don't really act, I be. So it's like I have to be that killer. I have to be that whatever. So if I were to play a gay guy, I would have to find that side of me that's gay. I haven't played a gay guy other than like comedy stuff, and I don't know if I could, because I don't know if I could really find that side of me, or even if I would want to, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, but my point is like the collateral damage of Hollywood, and especially, as being an actor and all that, is just you have to know yourself so much. So you have to be self-aware, and you end up being self-aware, self-involved, self, and self-serving. And to me, that's the real, the part of the Satanism that I've experienced is just that, that Church of Satan, do what thou wilt, and just glorify thyself, and do everything for yourself. Like, I was a Christian, back then. Now, of course, I would go to church on Sunday morning and then be depressed because everybody in Hollywood at my church, they were all going to eat with their families. And then I wasn't, because my family was back in Texas. I was going through a divorce. And then I would go kill a bottle of, Jim Beam at the bar, after church on Sunday. That was my Sundays. And it's because, I wasn't into Satanism at all. I didn't, but I look back and I go, wow, man, I kind of was participating in that kind of Satanism, in the sense that, I moved away from everyone I loved to pursue this goal, and destroyed lives. I look back and I look at my children now, and it breaks my heart. I just, my goal is to be a better grandfather than I was father. So that to me is what I experienced. I'm sure there's some crazy debaucherous stuff, and especially relatively speaking, like if you take, a good Baptist in Texas, and they were to, go to one Hollywood party, they'd be like, it'd be like that "Mama Told Me Not to Come," that old Three Dog Night songs, like,
Mm-hmm.
like "Mama told me not to come." I mean, there's definitely that. It's wilder than an East Texas party, but at the same time, there's less fights. So pick your poison. There's always a fight at a party in East Texas.
Totally, yeah. Especially if you start talking about barbecue.
What's that?
Like, I said, especially if you bring up barbecue.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. It's not like people say, "Oh, I cook the best barbecue." No, I cook the best barbecue. It doesn't result to like, let's have a competition. No, it's going to be a fist fight. Somebody's going through the window.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I have seen it firsthand. So again, we're going to have you on so many other times, but we got to keep this rolling, because I want to get as much out to the people that I possibly can about Randal Reeder. Now, we all know you from Hollywood. We all know you from all the hit TV shows and all the movies that you've been in. The famous guy with the pool cue, the famous guy coming up from behind somebody and looking like the Undertaker.
Right.
We all know that part of Randal. What a lot of folks may not understand is that you went to faith-based acting. And actually, you have created and I believe directed and produced a show that's now on PureFlix that's doing wonderful. And it's called Sons of Thunder. And I want to go ahead and I want to play a little trailer reel now.
Yeah.
Reading that Bible just drove a wedge between me and my club brothers.
I want out. You need my blessing for that.
I'm trying to find my way out of the club, but I need more time.
I don't know how much more time I can give you.
You doser's girl. You swore an oath to us.
I have to leave town. It's the only way to keep you safe.
Faith in God means trusting in Him. But I will be here when you figure out what real faith is.
I know there's no shortage of folks that need the kind of help I can give, but I'm trusting the Lord has a plan for me.
There's a lot of history here you don't know about.
There may be, but he came here knowing that history.
You can't tell me to believe, and I'm just going to believe.
I told you we needed a reservation.
No, Lord, not them. You know Jesus? I guess no one around here knows Jesus. Oh, Lord, be with me.
Nothing can protect you from the devil's reach.
And I guess I'll have to rely on Jesus then.
Hollywood iconic tough guy. Hollywood iconic tough guy. Goes faith-based, folks. Pure flicks. Sons of Thunder. It is faith-based. Randal Reeder has changed his life, folks. He is a saved savage. Now, I want you guys to head over to PureFlix, and I want you to watch Sons of Thunder because you will love it. Randal plays Simon in this hit TV series, and I tell you what, it is a remarkable show, and it will definitely help inspire so many people out there if you just give this a couple of episodes, and then you'll be hooked like I was and like my wife was when we watched this a while back. And we certainly cannot wait for the next season to come up. But here's the question. Here's the $1 million question. What is a saved savage?
Oh, wow. You know, a saved savage is kind of like Simon, actually, because Simon was in a motorcycle club called the Devil's Hand. The character I played, Simon. And, you know, he was, you know, a combat veteran or whatever. And he had ended up, you know, finding his brotherhood in this motorcycle club. And then he just came across a Bible and started reading it and got saved. And then he no longer was able, he was no longer comfortable doing the things that he was doing before. And because he's saved and God was going through that sanctification process. And it drove a wedge between him and his club, who's still the Devil's Hand, you know. And so a saved savage is really that. I mean, I a couple of years ago, I was driving on the road and we were moving some stuff from West Texas to East Texas, and my brother and I and my son, and I was just kind of spending time with the Lord on this 8-hour drive. I had praise and worship music going, and I was just trying to do something. I said, God, I want to wake up every day for you. I want to raise money for other producers to produce faith-based, you know, like the Irwin brothers and people who make awesome stuff, you know. And I was going to do this anyway. I was going to do this charity, this 501c, just to raise money for it. And God I kept hearing this saved savage. What is a saved savage that keeps coming up? Lord, like there's no one in the car with me. I've got praise and worship going. The windows are up. The devil can't get in. Like, what is a saved savage? Is it a production company? Is it a ministry? Is it a movement? Is it a shirt company? Because it's pretty cool. Saved Savage, you know, is it a brand? And he goes, yeah, it's all that, but you're a saved savage. And then I went to understanding for the next few months, starting to understand what a saved savage was. And it really healed my relationship, or began my healing process between me and God, because, you know, I was, you know, constantly condemning myself for what I was, you know, because I mean, I've just done some stupid stuff and violent stuff and things over the years to, you know, to get by, make money for my family, different things like that. And I was just a savage, you know, but I did love the Lord but I was just, you know, bipolar, almost like Christian and, you know, heathen, and which really we all are. And and then it just turned into, God says, hey, I want you to go into these bars and do a church service at 2:00. He was very specific. And I was like, okay, that sounds crazy. But yeah, we just finished up a documentary on Saved Savage. I'll be releasing it, and I'll send it to you and you can post it. But it's like a half hour kind of explaining the origin and of that, where, you know, going from Hollywood to ministering, which I can't believe because I curse too bad to be a minister. You know what I'm saying? I still get mad at traffic. I mean, I'm just, one day going to catch a case because some guy cut me off. It's like I'm not a good Christian at all.
Folks, not the guy to cut off. He is not the guy to cut off. Let me be clear about that, because he may look little in the car, and then when he gets out, you're like, uh-oh, we got big problems in Little China.
So that's kind of what a safe savage is, I've been praying for a while for our scripture. We've got a couple scriptures, but I would say the scripture that I cling to right now to explain safe savage was when Paul said in 1 Timothy 1:15, he said, Christ came to save the sinner, of whom I am chief, or I'm worst in the NIV. It's just like we're the worst sinners but we're saved through grace, and so that's what a safe savage is, So we go into these bars and we take the gospel on a Sunday afternoon where God typically is not, or doesn't. People don't think of God being at a bar on 2:00 on a Sunday, but we go in there every Sunday, and that's Safe Savage Sunday services, and that's within underneath the banner of Safe Savage Ministries, which who knows what's going to be, because we just did a documentary and we may do a TV show. So there's a lot of things it's going to be, but the main thing is this older man up in Nashville, Charlie, he had told me, he said, son, you think this is about helping people, going out and helping people at the bars. And it is, you're going out there and God's going to use you for that. He said, but this is all really about a relationship between you and the Father. And man, no truer words have ever been spoken. It's through serving God, I'm becoming a better human, becoming a better Christian. And evidently that's what it took for me, to do that, and maybe it's kind of a penance. I don't know, but that's kind of what's happening. And I'm able to go out and talk to and relate to people that I can relate to, and that they can relate to me, because I've got so many scars on my knuckles, and have done so many stupid, horrible things, So that's kind of what Safe Savage is.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it, right on the head, is that you are relatable to a different demographic that may not be relatable to your average pastor. Right. In a church. And you can go in there and you can preach the gospel, and you can open the Bible, and you guys can do some praise and worship together, and have you be the leader, and have you as working as the vehicle, if you will, vehicle to get them from living this life to being saved themselves, and bettering their life, in turn bettering everybody else's that comes into their life. So you are a vehicle that God is using to transform people, one person at a time. And a lot of these people that you hang out with are savages. And you are saving these savages. You're saying, look, there's a better way, guys. Follow me. Follow me. And I will take you there.
Just follow Christ, and that's the thing. It's just because if he can save me, he can save them. And that's really what it is. And I think that's a flaw. I know we're running out of time, but that's a flaw with church, the brick and mortar church and all that, is that so many people we talk to, they're like, well, I'm going to go to church when I get my life cleaned up. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. For one, you never get your life cleaned up. Once you clean something out, it's like sanding an old vehicle, and you're like, okay, well, I can sand this dent out, and you're like, ooh, there's Bondo there. I got to take that Bondo out. And then you fix that, and then there's something. Oh, well, it was covering up a hole full of rust. And now, like when you're restoring an old hot rod, it's just like you go deeper and deeper and deeper, and you find out there's really no when we're talking about being a flawed man, there's just in this carnal flesh, there's no end to it. It's like once God pulls that one thorn out of your side, it reveals there's another thorn, and you're like, man, now I got to work on that. So,
but, that Pandora's box for sure.
Laid in church is people, and that's what we try to do. Now I go to church. I've got two pastors. One in California and one in Texas. So I'm all for church. I'm not against it at all. We're not anti-church. We're not pro-drinking, but we don't go in there and saying you bunch of sinners that are drinking. I mean,
right.
A lot of our guys, we're the drinkingest church I ever seen, because there's a bunch of bar tabs are nice. The bars enjoy when the Save Savage is there. 50 people coming in there, and a lot of them ordering drinks. So, it's an interesting thing. So.
And folks, look, Randal, he still comes across as this tough guy. But folks, let me be clear. Randal is a very kind-hearted, genuine human being who has his heart in the right place. And he's an honorable man, an extremely honorable man. And I don't say that lightly.
Yeah.
But, you're right. We are evolving all the time as humans. We're evolving all the time as people. You really can't prepare yourself to go do something. It's kind of like being an 18-year-old kid and planning out your whole life. That ain't going to work. You got to jump into it. You got to jump into life, and then you start to do an as-built, and it starts to flow, and it starts to unfold the way that your story was intended to be unfolded. Because, look, our stories are already written. It's up to us to jump in there, to get off the sidelines and into the game, to find out what it may be. And you've been called to serve. And you, Randal, have answered that call to service. In the few minutes here, before we have to wrap up the program, I want to know how our listeners can help you and Americonic.com, or perhaps even get invited out to a Saved Savage service.
Right. Yeah, Save Savage. We've got SaveSavageMinistry.com. Pull up Save Savage, and it should pull up. Facebook, we got Save Savage. Follow us on all the, social media, hoo-haws, the Facebook, Instagrams, all that kind of stuff. But we work the Facebook pretty regularly with Save Savage Sunday Service, on Save Savage Ministries, and now Save Savage Fellowship. Which we're doing, we've got one down south and one up north, come out and be a part of it. We're not really, I guess, ministries need money. If you want to donate or something, you feel led to donate, awesome. I think there's a donation button on the website, and come out to a service and see what it's about. And tell us what we're doing wrong. I don't care. There's no judgment really when we go in there. We're just fumbling through this thing, man. I've never done this before, but yeah, we go out and we spread the love. And with Americonic, it's way too much to go into on this too much. We'll have to talk about it some other time, But Americonic was something. That's only two things God's let me do, is Save Savage Ministries and Americonic. And Americonic is simply, we just want to build, or we wanted to build, and we built it. We're never finished building one of these things. It's evolving every day. But we wanted to build a Netflix or a Amazon that wasn't, evil, what we consider evil, wicked. Just the stuff that the woke, crazy, nutty stuff that they promote and they pay for, that's where your $10 a month is going, or your $15 a month is going with these companies. And so we felt led to start a streaming platform that is American centric, that echoes American values, that isn't anti-God, isn't anti-America, all of that stuff. And we've got it up and running. We launched on the 4th of July, a soft launch. We're not fully built out. We're still uploading content, but I don't know, there's 100 titles or something up there. And we're uploading all the time. We've got original content that we're producing and all that. But yeah, come out and go to Americonic and join with the passcode or the promo code TALLY, or you should probably have a hyperlink that you can post that somebody can just click on it and it goes and enters that instantly. And watch your stuff and other people's like that. And we're just actively pursuing people like yourself to make America great, or make entertainment great again. Oh, look at that. Make entertainment great again.
There you go, Randal. Thank you so much for joining us today. And folks, you heard it from him. Go ahead and check out Americonic.com today and use promo code TALLY. For